Rome. It's a name synonymous with power, conquest, and an empire that stretched across much of the known world. But even Rome had its limits. In the east, a formidable foe stood defiant, the Parthian Empire. For centuries, these skilled warriors held back the Roman legions. They shattered the myth of Roman invincibility. The Parthians were a force of nature. They were a wall that Rome could never breach. This wasn't just another border skirmish. The Romans and Parthians were locked in a clash of civilizations. Two different worlds collided. Their struggle for dominance would shape the destiny of the ancient world. The Parthians weren't just fighting for territory, they were fighting for their way of life. They were fighting to preserve their culture against the relentless Roman machine. The Parthians became Rome's eastern nightmare. Roman emperors would learn to fear the Parthian name. Theirs was a story of resilience, of cunning, and of a military power that challenged the very foundations of Roman might. Theirs is a story that deserves to be told. Their story impacts us even now. They remind us that even the mightiest empires can be challenged. They remind us that courage and determination can hold back even the most overwhelming odds. So let's journey back to the ancient world. Let's explore the fascinating saga of Parthia, the empire that dared to defy Rome. The story of the Parthians begins not in grand palaces, but on the open steppes. They were a nomadic people. They were skilled horsemen. Their origins lie in the vast plains of Central Asia. They were part of a larger group known as the Scythians. These nomadic tribes were renowned for their equestrian abilities. They were masters of the bow and arrow. Their lives were intertwined with the rhythm of the steppes, but the Parthians were not destined to remain nomads forever. Driven by ambition and opportunity, they migrated southwards. They saw weakness in the crumbling Seleucid Empire. The Seleucids were the successors to Alexander the Great's eastern territories. They were ripe for the taking. The Parthians seized their chance. Under the leadership of Arsaces I, they carved out a kingdom for themselves. This was the beginning of the Parthian Empire. Arsaces, a name that would become synonymous with Parthian royalty, laid the foundation for a dynasty that would endure for centuries. He established a new capital at Nisa. This marked a pivotal moment in Parthian history. Their nomadic past was not forgotten, however. It would become the source of their military strength. This unique blend of nomadic adaptability and newfound stability made the Parthians a formidable force. They were poised to challenge the existing powers of the ancient world. The stage was set for a clash of titans. Rome was watching. The Parthian Empire was not a monolithic entity. It was a vibrant tapestry woven from numerous cultures. Unlike the centralized Roman state, the Parthians ruled through a system of vassal kingdoms. Local rulers pledged allegiance to the Parthian king of kings. They maintained a degree of autonomy in exchange for tribute and military support. This decentralized structure provided the Parthians with a surprising level of stability. It allowed them to govern their vast territories effectively. It also fostered a climate of cultural exchange. Greek influence, a legacy of the conquered Seleucid Empire, remained strong in many areas. Parthian art and architecture reflected this fusion of Persian, Greek, and nomadic traditions. The Parthians were tolerant rulers. They allowed their subjects to practice their own religions and customs. This pragmatic approach prevented widespread unrest. It allowed the Parthians to focus on their primary external threat, Rome. This cultural blend gave the Parthian Empire a unique character. It was a melting pot of ideas and traditions. This made them adaptable and resilient. They were able to absorb and integrate different peoples into their empire. This was a key factor in their longevity. It also set them apart from the more rigid Roman state. The Battle of Carrhae was a watershed moment. It marked the beginning of Rome's long and frustrating conflict with Parthia. It also served as a stark warning. The legions were not invincible. In 53 BC, Marcus Licinius Crassus, a wealthy and ambitious Roman general, led his legions eastward. He craved military glory and the riches of Parthia. He would find neither. Crassus, blinded by greed and overconfidence, marched his army deep into the Mesopotamian desert. He ignored the advice of more cautious commanders. He fell into a carefully laid Parthian trap. The Parthian force, led by the brilliant general Surena, was a spectacle to behold. Their ranks were filled with horse archers. These mounted warriors were the backbone of the Parthian army. The ensuing battle was a disaster for Rome. The Parthian horse archers, using their superior mobility, surrounded the Roman legions. They unleashed a relentless barrage of arrows. Crassus's legions, weighed down by their armor and ill-suited for desert warfare, were decimated. Crassus himself was killed, and his head was allegedly used as a prop in a Parthian play. The defeat sent shockwaves through the Roman world. Carrhae became synonymous with defeat and humiliation. It shattered the aura of Roman invincibility. It announced the arrival of a new power in the east. The Parthians had arrived. They had bloodied Rome's nose, and they were not going anywhere. Section 5. Masters of the Saddle Parthian Military Prowess. The Parthian military was a masterpiece of adaptation. It was perfectly suited for the vast plains of their empire. At its heart were the horse archers, masters of mounted warfare. These warriors were trained from childhood to ride and shoot. They could loose arrows with deadly accuracy while at full gallop. Their tactics were designed to harass and wear down their enemies. The Parthians also fielded heavy cavalry known as cataphracts. These armored behemoths, both horse and rider encased in metal, were used for shock assaults. They could break enemy lines with devastating force. The combination of speed, agility, and heavy firepower made the Parthian army a formidable opponent, but their real strength lay in their strategic flexibility. They were masters of the feigned retreat. They would lure pursuing enemies into ambushes. Their knowledge of the terrain and their ability to strike from unexpected directions made them unpredictable adversaries. They were masters of psychological warfare. The fear they instilled in their enemies was as potent as any weapon. This military prowess allowed them to not only withstand Roman aggression, but to challenge Roman dominance in the east. Their victories served as a constant reminder that Rome was not invincible. Section 6. A century of conflict, Rome and Parthia's enduring struggle. The Battle of Carrhae was just the opening act in a centuries-long struggle between Rome and Parthia. It was a clash of ideologies. It was a battle for control of valuable trade routes. It was a struggle for supremacy in the east. The ensuing century saw periods of intense warfare interspersed with uneasy truces and diplomatic maneuvering. The Romans, driven by a thirst for revenge and territorial expansion, launched numerous campaigns against Parthia. Emperors like Trajan and Septimius Severus achieved notable victories. They even managed to sack the Parthian capital of Ctesiphon, but these triumphs proved to be short-lived. The Parthians, masters of defense and masters of the counterattack, always bounced back. They harassed Roman supply lines. They exploited any weakness in the Roman ranks. They inflicted costly defeats on their overextended enemies. They proved time and again that the East was not ripe for Roman conquest. This back-and-forth struggle drained both empires of resources and manpower. It highlighted the resilience of the Parthian state. It showcased the limits of Roman power. It was a stalemate that would shape the political landscape of the ancient world for centuries. Section 7. Guardians of the Silk Road, Parthia's economic powerhouse. Beyond the battlefield, the Parthians were shrewd traders and astute diplomats. They controlled a vast network of trade routes. These routes linked the Roman Empire in the west to the Han dynasty in the east. This strategic location placed them at the heart of the Silk Road. The Silk Road was more than just a trade route. It was a conduit for ideas, technologies, and cultural exchange. The Parthians profited immensely from the flow of goods and ideas along this network. They taxed merchants. They controlled the movement of silk, spices, and other luxury items. This economic prosperity fueled their war machine. It allowed them to fund their armies. It let them maintain their independence from Rome. The Parthians understood the importance of diplomacy. They maintained diplomatic relations with various powers in the region. They used diplomacy to counter Roman influence. They forged alliances with other kingdoms. They played a delicate balancing act. They were masters of securing their interests through both trade and diplomacy. This made them a major player in the international politics of the ancient world. To Section 8, the fall of giants, from Parthia to the Sasanians. Even empires, as enduring as they may seem, eventually crumble. Internal strife, weakened by centuries of conflict with Rome and the rise of a new power within their borders, ultimately spelled the end for the Parthians. In the early 3rd century AD, a powerful noble family, the Sasanians, rose to prominence in the southern region of Persia. They challenged the authority of the Parthian king. This internal power struggle weakened the Parthian state. It left them vulnerable to external threats. Ardashir I, the ambitious leader of the Sasanians, defeated the last Parthian king, Artabanus V, at the Battle of Hormozgan in 224 AD. This victory marked the end of the Parthian Empire and the beginning of the Sasanian Empire. The Sasanians, inheritors of the Parthian legacy, would continue to challenge Roman power in the east for centuries to come. The fall of the Parthians was a momentous event in ancient history. It reshaped the balance of power in the east. It paved the way for the rise of a new Persian empire. Yet the Parthians' legacy would live on. Section 9. Echoes of an Empire, Parthia's enduring legacy. The Parthian Empire, though often overshadowed by its Roman contemporaries, left an indelible mark on history. They were more than just Rome's eastern nemesis. They were a vibrant and influential civilization in their own right. Their military innovations, particularly their mastery of horse archery and heavy cavalry, influenced warfare for centuries. Their decentralized political structure, a unique blend of centralized power and local autonomy, provided a model for later empires. Their role in facilitating trade and cultural exchange along the Silk Road helped to connect East and West. But perhaps their most enduring legacy is their unwavering resistance to Roman expansion. For centuries, they held the line against the seemingly unstoppable Roman legions. They proved that even the mightiest empires could be challenged. They reminded the world that freedom is worth fighting for. The Parthians may be gone, but their story continues to resonate. They remind us that courage, determination, and adaptability can overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. They remind us that history is not just about the victors, but also about those who dared to resist. Theirs is a story that continues to inspire. It is a story that deserves to be remembered.